Quentin Spoon, City Postmaster, at your service.
Little orange bird, in the sunshine tree.
Hi, this is Minnie Mouse. I have so many errands to run, I might be out all day. Please leave me a message and I'll call you back. Bye-bye.
Yeah, as soon as I find a ladder, I'll be right up.
Oh, boy, this is gonna be swell!
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your passport to the Disney parks. I am your host, Lou Mangello, and this is show number 789. And together, as we have been for nearly 20 years, I not only want to help you have the best vacation experience when you go to the parks, but I also want to bring you a little bit of that Disney magic wherever and whenever you are. Here on the podcast, my weekly live video, blog, events, free weekly newsletter, and more. I invite you to please join the community and find everything at WDWradio.com. And we got a fun show this week. I think one that you and I and all of us who are Disney fans can relate to, because I want to share our top 10 iconic sounds in Walt Disney World this week, from the nostalgic to the familiar and memorable ones to those that might even elicit, and it's okay, an emotional response. And it's why, since the very first episode of the show, I play those radio tunes at the beginning, because hopefully you hear one or more that puts a smile on your face. And this week, I'm sure you're going to find at least one that we cover that you know, love, remember, and enjoy. And maybe if you have one or two that you want to add, you can let me know over in the clubhouse or by calling the voicemail. Plus, I'm curious what your favorite iconic Walt Disney World sound is. Then stay tuned for our Disney Trivia Question of the Week. Connect with me on social. I am at Lou Mangello. Please don't forget to subscribe to our free weekly newsletter. And when you do, you get a free copy of my 102 Things to Do in Walt Disney World at least once book. And if you like what you hear, and I hope that you do, please share the show and tell a friend. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show. We all have them. I do. You do. You might not even be consciously aware of what they are until you think about them. But we all have those sounds. Those sounds we hear when we're in Walt Disney World that are familiar and nostalgic, memorable, and yes, maybe even a little bit comforting. And I think they make us smile, consciously or inwardly, and hopefully might even elicit a little bit of an emotional response. That's not just okay. That's awesome, because Disney is all about how it makes us feel. And sometimes, as we've explained on past shows, it's not just something that we see or smells, which we revisited back on show 675, but also what we hear. And specifically for this week's show, I'm not talking about the music or the narration or the dialogue or our favorite quotes. I'm talking about the top 10 iconic sounds in Walt Disney World. It could be something we hear in the background, maybe that just sort of exists in our subconscious, but that we love and we know and remember. And I think we long to hear when we can't get to the parks as often as we would like. Excuse me. So this week, let's explore some of those familiar and favorite sounds in our top 10-ish list with someone who, when you hear the sound of a top 10 list, the sound of his dulcet tones and melodic voice just comes to mind. He is, of course, Tim Foster from Celebrations Magazine.
See, I was going to say, Lou, you sound fantastic, but you beat me to the sound joke. So,
well, listen, it takes me seconds to think of what to say. So,
but I love this topic. This is going to be fun.
And, you know, we've talked, look, Tim, we've been doing, like, I've been podcasting for 20 years. You've been a part of the show, my life, for most of that time. And we've talked about, like, top 10 quotes and top 10 pieces of music. But these are just sounds. They could be sound effects or sounds that exist in the background. They could be man-made. They could be natural. And I was looking back, and I'm like, how have we talked about this before? We did back on show 231. We talked about some of the hidden audio treasures in Walt Disney World, where we sort of emphasize the importance of appreciating some of the subtle audio details that I think enhance the overall experience. But I think, Tim, these are more familiar ones that we know and love. And like I said, it's not about dialogue. It's not about a piece of music, but just these familiar sounds that I think for a lot of I'll speak for myself, like they have meaning. They have meaning for a variety of reasons.
I think when you did this, when I was going through my list, I had a lot of the same thing. It was kind of like smells in the sense of you don't really think about these things top of mind when you think about Walt Disney World, but when you, in this case, hear them, they do take you right there. It's like a very sensory memory thing, and they're very powerful. Because as I was listing all these, I'm hearing them in my mind, and man, I'm back. I'm in Walt Disney World. This is great. So, and I'll talk about more as we go through the list, the ones that especially do that. But yeah, one of those things you don't really think about, but yeah, it's a big part of the experience.
And it's why, like, since literally show number 1, like for 20 years, I start the show with the sound of the radio tuning, because I want you to hear something that like generates a smile or a memory or makes you wonder like, oh, where have I heard this one before? So you make it a game. It like I said, I think these sounds are often comforting, even ones that don't have any dialogue or not necessarily a piece of music. Like I said, these are familiar ones that we know and love. And speaking of knowing and loving, Tim, I want you to go first because, again, we never talk about these ahead of time. And I'm always, I also don't give you a lot of direction intentionally. Because
no, you don't.
I want to see where it goes. Do you remember? I just thought of this. Like, this has got to be a decade ago. I said, Tim, we're going to do a segment on top 10 places to stop and smell the roses. Metaphorically speaking. And you're like, well, the first place I go is the rose garden. I'm like, no.
I did not say that.
I'm going to go back and find the clip from that show.
Come on.
And you're like, oh, I thought these were like places that there's roses in. So
yeah, I dispute that. But hey, why not?
But by sound,
I don't know how I can mess this one up. You did lay out all the rules, no music, no dialogue, no safety spiels and all of that. So I'm not sure how I can mess this up, but I'm going to try with my first one.
It's going to be a go with me here right out of the gate, isn't it?
There actually is a little go with me here. No, not really. But so actually and I've actually thought about this many times over the years too. So the first thing I thought of when you said this was actually the TTA. And I can see the pain in your face as I'm recording, and I probably still read. But it's actually for a couple reasons. One, and I'll start with the part B, but I'll come back to part A.
I like how you start with one and then you go to B, which is fine.
Right. This is the way it works. So, but because I'm thinking of the clack, clack, clack as you go through that sound of you going along the tracks and going over those linear induction motors and picking up speed as you go into the main thoroughfare and so forth. And there's just something about that sound, especially when you're going through Space Mountain and it's echoing and it's all around you. But that's the second sound that came to mind. The first sound that came to mind was the chimes that you hear as you approach the fictional stations or Tomorrowland stops, depending on the narration you're listening to. And I actually had to reassure myself they were still there. I believe they're still there, but I always worry. But it's one of those things. I never really think about it until I'm there. As I'm walking down into Tomorrowland and I'll hear those chimes, or riding Tomorrowland and hear them. Even when I'm listening on my phone to the recording and I hear it, I am there. I am in Tomorrowland. I'm in a totally different place. I am in this world where aliens and robots and humans can come play and work and all of that. I'm there. And the funny thing, this is the go with me here part, and this is just kind of reinforcing my story that this is such a memory sensory powerful thing, because I'm not a big basketball person, Now you're going, Tim, what are you talking about? So not a big basketball person, but I started watching my Philadelphia 76ers because that's where I live. And the reason I bring this up, though, they have a thing, and I don't know if all teams do this because I don't really know basketball. But when we make free throws in the stadium, they play a chime that sounds very similar to the Tomorrowland chime. It goes do-do-do-do when they make their free throws. And when they did that, oddly enough, I'm watching basketball, but I'm in Tomorrowland. I'm on the TTA riding this, and I got a warm, magical feeling, and I kept watching the Sixers just to watch them make free throws so I could hear that chime again, even though it's not the same thing. But just my point that it was such a random thing. It's not even identical. It's close, but it was close enough to trigger that memory of that sound that takes me back to Tomorrowland, the Magic Kingdom, and all those memories come flooding back. So.
Well, I'm just qualifying this for two reasons. One, you stole the thump thump sound, and two, it's funny because I thought about the chimes, and I'm like, am I going to disqualify this because technically it's music? I know it's not. No. It's not. I'm with you because they're sort of these melodic tones that, without even sort of me playing them for reference, chances are you who's listening in your car at home, you hear it in your mind, right? With these wonderful sort of xylophone-like musical signals that in a sense, it sort of encapsulates and almost represents this futuristic theme of Tomorrowland. That being said, I did have, the thump thump, right? With that thumping over the maglev pucks, the magnetic levitation pucks. There's this repeated rhythmic, like thumping sound as it transitions from one to the other. And I started to think about why, what is it about this? And I think there's a lot of, I really tried to sort of analyze what it is about these sounds. It's not just because we love the attraction, right? I think there's this sense of movement. There's a sense of progress. There's a sense of being on a future transportation system. I also think that there's something soothing about this. And I don't know how to describe it. Like I always used to say, if you want to let your kids fall asleep, take them on the People Mover, because I think there's that thump, 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 thump. It's almost like this constant rhythmic heartbeat that is immediately recognizable. And there's almost, like a hypnotic, I don't know how else to describe it. Like it's relaxed and almost hypnotic. And I think deeply nostalgic for a lot of Disney fans. So the People Mover is not just an attraction to get a tour of Tomorrowland, but I think it's a great place to unwind. And I think the sounds of this, coupled with the background audio and the music, etc., really is one of the things that makes what you hear on the TT People Mover, is as important of an element as what you see.
So it's funny. I call it TTA. You call it People Mover.
I'm trying to sort of use the proper. It's the TTA in my heart, but it's the People Mover on the maps. So,
isn't the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover the most difficult attraction name to pronounce in the entire Walt Disney World?
The highway, your highway in the sky.
In the sky, yeah.
Whatever. But yeah, so I'm with you, man.
TTA in my heart.
Very much on my list. I want to preface my first one and give you a peek, God help you, into my mind and how I sort of came up with my list. And for me, and this is like the truth, I just sat down and I closed my eyes and I let the first sounds that came into my mind hit my list. I let myself be 7 years old again. I thought about where the sort of internal prompt took me, spoiler alert, right to Magic Kingdom, and the things that I would hear that would make me smile or make me think about my parents. And no, spoiler alert number 2, none of these are food related, I don't think.
Whoa, what? Hey.
Wait.
Really?
There's no sound of oysters getting shucked at the boathouse, although now I mention it. Wait a second.
You were saying it without saying it.
Jesus, right. But these are also not about what attractions are my favorites or where I go first, but really, as I walk through the parks, these are the sounds I listen for, or sometimes even make it a point to stop and listen, or even if it's not my destination, I can sort of hear in the periphery and may or may not make me internally and externally smile. So the first one on my list, I want to take you back in time. That's the going back in time sound. I want to take you back in time to Boot Hill in the year 1850, or in reality, last week. I'm going to take you back to Saturday, June 22nd, 2024, because this is the last time, as I wipe away a silent tear, that we heard the sound of the Frontierland Shootin' Arcade. So I know technically it is now an extinct attraction. However, this is, and Tim, I don't know why. I don't know when the last time is that it actually put quarters or dollars or whatever in the slots. It shows you how long it's been. But the sound of the rifle, that's what I mean. Like, as I'm walking through Frontierland, I consciously listen for it. And there's something about that helps to set the sort of immersive stage for Frontierland as a whole, and transports us back into the Wild West. I think about, playful competitions with my dad or brother, and the fact that I had a really tough time hitting the target. But when I did, you had all these other sounds, right? That clicked in, the clinks and the dings and all sort of the animated reactions of a tin can or a bell or whatever it might be. And I think that, right, there's that instant feedback, there's that sort of instant reward system, and that you have this sort of sense of accomplishment. But I think for me, a lot of this is very much attached to nostalgia, not nostalgia for the West or Western films, but using this attraction, playing this attraction a lot as a kid. I associate it with laughter and talking with people as you're doing it, and some of the different sounds and the ambient music that came from it. I wish I could go back in time to when this attraction first opened, and I know I was there in November of 1971. Back when they used to use, so these are actually refitted 54 caliber Hawkins rifles, but at the beginning they actually shot real lead pellets from the rifles. Hello, lawyers, at the targets. No way. So forget about the safety concerns, but the reason why they modified them was because they had to keep repainting the targets every night because the paint kept on getting chipped off by the pellets. How anybody allowed them to, shoot real pellets. But I wonder what that sound was like, as opposed to sort of the manufactured sound when the the LED hits the target. So, for whatever reason, Tim, the rest in peace, the now extinct Frontierland Shootin' Arcade was the first thing that came to my mind.
Oh, see, now this is sad. I've been off the internet, I guess. Lou, you're breaking this news to me. I didn't know this. Boy, not that I think my daughter did it one time, but yeah, it was fun. But it was definitely part of just walking down Frontierland, just hearing that in the background. Yeah.
And, it exists in other Disney parks. I remember I just came from Disneyland Paris and remember stopping and seeing and wanting to play it there. Again, I didn't have any coins, but I stopped and watched, and I wonder, this is going to be a Disney Vacation Club sort of rest area in Frontierland. You wonder if this sound is sounding the death knell for Disneyland and Disneyland Paris and some of the other arcades that exist around the world.
Oh, boy. Well, way to start the show on an optimistic note there.
Back to you.
I'm sad. Now I'll do this. And I'm very surprised you didn't take this off the list on the very first item. So I could easily do a 2-for-1 here, but I'm only going to do one.
I know,
even
exactly.
though I did that in the first
I'm
round.
going to write down on my little sticky note where I think that you're going, just to see which one you take next. Go ahead.
So in terms of sounds, and this actually is a sound that also falls into the category, I know I am in Walt Disney World when. Mm-hmm. And it is when I hear the howling coming from the Haunted Mansion.
There you go. And I'm
there it is. There it is. And as you know, there's a number 2, a second one that goes right along with this, but I'll leave that for you to maybe fill in the back. But that how and actually clear it up for me, Lou. Is it a wolf or is it a dog? What is it?
My understanding is that it is a dog.
It is a dog. Okay, the howling dog.
Why would there be a wolf in the
howling at the moon? Wolf, I'm
not sure that there's a big, huge wolf population in the Hudson River Valley, but
yeah,
we might be wrong.
Anyway,
wouldn't be the first time.
But it's one of those things, and it's not. Certainly, it's about the Haunted Mansion, and being when you're at the Haunted Mansion in the queue, hearing that is obviously a big part of the allure of the attraction itself. But I'm talking when you're not even there. Like you can hear it from on a windless day. You could hear it from the Contemporary or even the Wilderness Lodge if the wind is right. Certainly on the way over or walking over, or when you go in. And it's just one of those sounds you can hear it from everywhere. And it's like I said, to me, it's not just about the Haunted Mansion. It's usually the first thing we hear that tells us you're in Walt Disney World now, and that whole world is left behind. So that's my first one. And like I said, there's a second part to this. So I'll let you mention that if you want to.
So, look, we could do top 10 sounds of the Haunted Mansion.
Well, we could, and I actually have another one on the list, which is Inside, but that's another.
I do too. I have multiple. Yep. This is where I was actually going to go next because I wanted to steal it from you before you got into it. So
thank you.
let's just have a conversation about the Haunted Mansion, because I too, after all these years, Tim, we're really coming together, and our lists are starting to align.
It only took 20 years.
The first sound that I thought of was the sound of the howling dog. And it's funny because it's not such a super prominent sound. You don't hear it often. You don't hear it through the attraction, but that sort of mournful howl that you can hear outside. And sometimes you don't have to even be like near the Haunted Mansion. Like you can hear it farther away.
Everywhere. Yeah.
It's eerie and it's haunting, and it gives you this sort of sense of unease, and it's sort of a reminder and sort of a hint of what is to come, right? It's this quintessentially spooky sound, right? And sort of makes you wonder, like, where is the dog? What is the dog doing? Is this the dog that we see? But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. There's other sounds of the Haunted Mansion that instantly come to mind when I close my eyes. Like I think about the sound of rolling thunder that you hear inside and outside, particularly like inside the mansion, and that deep rumbling sound. And I love the sound I love lightning and thunder. I know I'm weird. Like I love sitting outside undercover and hearing the sound of, I do. There is something like wonderfully comforting. I don't know. And I know it's supposed to, the thunder is supposed to sort of be the sound of impending doom and lots of tension.
It is dangerous, Lou.
It is very dangerous, but there is, I think there's an emotional element to it too. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm thinking inside the attraction, and we talked about the thump thump of the maglev pucks. There's also that similar slow rhythmic thumping in the attic scene where we hear the heartbeat of one Constance Hatchaway, the ghostly bride. This one, it's more haunting. It's more intimate. It gives you this sense of dread. It sort of symbolizes this lingering presence of the bride and the history that is associated with her. Like there's something very ominous about this heartbeat, as well as, maybe a little tragic and mysterious. And I mean, these are three, Tim, but I think the sounds of the dog and the thunder and the heartbeat are, one, not just prime examples of attention to detail, but how these auditory elements work in such harmony with the visual effects and the storytelling to create this remarkably immersive experience that has not changed, nor should it change, in the past 50 plus years.
Oh man. And I actually had a couple more on mine. I'll throw them in here since we're
lay them on me, brother.
I had a couple. I had the Heartbeat, of course. And, it's just so eerie how not like it's a lighthearted romp through Candyland before that by any stretch, but definitely Attic. Things so take an ominous turn when you're in there, with that Heartbeat. And even, with the current Constance Hatchaway figure, is one thing, but I've even go back to the prior version of The Bride when she was just the bride, and it was just this. I'm doing the motions like you can see me, but just standing there with this red heart, with no story, no explanation, no name, no anything. But I also think of when you're going down the corridor of the doors and you hear the rattling of the door knockers and the handles, and then you come to the clock with the ominous. Tick,
That's
tock,
right.
Tick,
The clock
tock,
was the other one.
Tick, tock,
That was on there,
oh. And then I don't know if you count this as safety spiel narration or something, but the one thing we're fond of doing when you're I actually think, Lou, you told me to do this, was in the stretching room to hang around a little bit and let everybody leave and listen for the whoosh and the get out, and that is always fun. And every time if I ever bring anybody new, I have them hang back and they listen to it, and it's. I want to say they're happy. I think they're more scared, but serves them right for listening to me. But yeah, that's we rattled off 6 there, or we could probably come up with 10, 20 more if we wanted to. But yeah, so the Haunted Mansion. So
yeah, you could also the guy who's trying to get out of the the coffin that's nailed shut.
Piano. Well, that's music, so
right. I'm trying to stay away from the music.
Yeah.
But even just the sound of the ride mechanism itself as you go through. So, all right. Assuming that it's my turn, I'm really this is like a fantasy draft. I'm trying to be strategic in my list. Like, do I take one that was super high on my list, or do I take one that I think Tim is going to
see? That's the thing. Are you going for genuine goodness, or are you just trying to be mean to me?
These are all genuinely good. It's just the order that I want to do it.
There's a bonus of.
Look, we're going to have obviously multiple. All right,
I have 20 on my list. By the way,
there was one that I sort of, again, I really did what I said. I closed my eyes and just started jotting down the first ones that came to mind, and that dictated the order of my list, at least in terms of notes. But I'm going to go out of order. I'm out of order. You're out of order. This entire top 10 is out of order. But I am going to stay in the same general area that I find that a number of clips that are, because your clips are on my list, because this clip was on my list, I'm going to go to Main Street USA. And I don't know if there's a particular name for this sound, but one of my favorite things to do, Tim, is just sit right down the middle of Main Street USA and literally or metaphorically close my eyes and just listen to a lot of the sounds there. And I find that as I'm closing my eyes right now, we can sort of tune in what we want to listen to, right? Are we listening to one of the sounds that will be on my list? Are we listening to the music in the background? Are we listening to, parents yelling at their kids, whatever it might be? But the sound that I thought of, and you don't hear all the time, but that same thing, it's this calm, nostalgic, and immersive sound that puts me into this early 20th century setting of small town Main Street, USA, is the clopping of the horses as they pull the Main Street trolley. Again, it's that same thing, right? It's that rhythmic clopping that is very distinctive, that I think it's a nostalgic sound of a simpler time. And this, it's the same thing, Tim. It's like the last two things we talked about. It's a sort of steady kind of measured beat is like it's a hallmark of, I think back to when, early on, especially, things have changed a little bit they used to do sort of the welcome show on the other side of the train, and then you walked into Main Street, and sort of Main Street came to life. And the sound of the early morning of the trolley cars making their way up and down Main Street is for me like a hallmark of Main Street, right? So it transports me to times being there with my family, and I think it transports us to what I know me personally, which could be a simpler time and a simpler sort of bygone era in small town America. And then you have these clopping hooves. You have like the little jingle of the harnesses and the reins. It just sort of continues to sort of paint this auditory picture of the authenticity and the charm of this very immersive and environment of Main Street USA that makes us feel like we've stepped into what Walt wanted, this idyllic turn of the century town.
Oh, I love that. I'm just picturing you sitting cross-legged in the middle of Main Street with your eyes closed.
Can somebody help this guy up? He's having a tough time getting out from sitting crisscross applesauce on Main Street.
I love that. And actually, my next one, I'm going to stay on Main Street, and it's actually going to be kind of part two of my other answer. But so sort of on Main Street, and it kind of has I think a lot of these sounds are going to have multiple reasons why we like them, but this is the obvious one. I feel like that everybody's probably screaming out there, but is the train whistle of the Walt Disney World Railroad. And for two reasons. One, the attraction itself, when you're on it and you're riding around, just the sounds of the train, the real train, and you hear all of it. You hear the engines and the chug and all of that, which we hadn't actually ridden it for quite a while, it having been down, and it's like I haven't been there when it was open. So I know the first time when we rode it again, that was a big part of just hearing the sounds and the sensations of actually riding a train. But even more so, to go along with the howling at the Haunted Mansion, hearing that train whistle, that's like part two of, I know I'm in Walt Disney World when we just arrived, we're walking out of the Contemporary or getting on the boat to go to from the Wilderness Lodge, and you hear that train whistle just coming across the water and the trees, and you can hear it from everywhere. And we having heard it again recently, because once the railroad came back, realized how much we missed it when the railroad was not there. And times we weren't there when it was down with all the construction things that were going on. And hearing it once again, that it's, hey, I'm in Walt Disney World. It was kind of a reassuring, like, hey, we're back in Walt Disney World and everything's back to normal, even though it's all new. But it's great. It's the wolf. I think the dog is harder to explain, but the whistle is just that nostalgic Main Street anywhere or Anytown USA feel. It's Walt Disney back in his day, Walt Disney's love for trains, and we can connect the dots that way. That's such a more direct connection to Walt Disney and Walt Disney World and Disneyland and everything. So, harder to explain the howling why it appeals to us, but the train whistle definitely so. But again, instant we hear that, we know we're home.
So I'm with you, but I'm not with you, because I had the Walt Disney World Railroad on my list, but not for the whistle.
Oh,
I have it for the bell. I have it for because when I thought of the train, I thought of the first thing I thought of was the bell, and I think I have a whistle on my list elsewhere, but the train bell is so sharp and so clear that you talked about the ambient noise of the park and the crowds. It wonderfully sort of cuts through that, right? It cuts through that ambient noise, and it gives you that instant sort of sense of nostalgia and the charm and the atmosphere of Main Street. I think you're right. It's the fact that it's directly connected to Walt and his love of trains. But I think too, where it is in the park is important, because especially if it's, I talked about sort of the welcome show that used to be, but as you're walking in the park and, really sort of the first attraction you see and one of the first sounds that you probably hear is the whistle and the bell. And I think that it symbolizes a lot of different things at the very least, and on its most basic level, the beginning of your adventure in the Magic Kingdom. It also could symbolize the first ride of the day. It might symbolize this, a break from the hustle and bustle. So while it might be something that is exciting, at the same time, I think it's also very relaxing. So it helps, again, to sort of paint the picture of Main Street, but I think also has like feelings that hit us differently. Again, and I'm a very nostalgic, sentimental person, so that's a lot of what I think about when I hear that, again, that sort of rhythmic sound of the train bell.
It's funny you said that, though, because the first thing I thought of train was the whistle. I didn't even think of the bell. But when you said that we've been talking about this, I instantly heard it in my mind as you said it, and I instantly went back there, and I was like, oh, yes, of course. And I can hear it. I can hear it now. Bing, I can... Yes, and
the fact that they're authentic, right? The fact that these were
that's a real bell.
From authentic, restored steam engines built in the early 20th century, and the story of how they got here from the Yucatan Peninsula, all those things are sort of wrapped up in that for a nerd like me that thinks about those details, and the fact that that bell, if that bell could talk and the stories that it could tell from all those years, not just of Walt Disney World guests, I think adds to some of the touch for me.
Yep.
All right. Well, now I don't want to do the next one because it's too close to this one. All right. So I'm going to jump a little bit, and we've if you notice, all of the ones we've talked about, and I'm not sure if this is by design or just because it's been around longest, have been in Magic Kingdom. And I'll admit to you, Tim, as I started to, in my mind's eye, the way I do this, because I'm a crazy person, I literally imagine myself sort of flying through the park, right? And stopping at all these different places and listening for sounds as I enter Future World, or as I go through World Showcase, or as I sit in my favorite, pavilion, as I go through Disney's Animal Kingdom. I tried to pull out other sounds that, for me, qualified to hop onto the list. And when I got to one of the other parks, it was instantly a single sound that came to mind. And I had a tough time identifying another sound in this park because I was so fixated on this sound that, once again, is authentic. It helps with the storytelling and the theming, and I'm going to use the nostalgia and sentiment word, and the immersion into the golden age of Hollywood. And do you have any idea where I'm going? I can't see your face. Do you have any idea where I'm going?
I'm curious because I did the same thing you did go around the park.
It is a mechanical sound that you could only hear, not in one spot, but when they work, in 5 different locations in Disney's Hollywood Studios. The only way I can describe it so that you hopefully instantly recognize it and hear it is the bell and the sort of the mechanical sounds of the clunk and the whir of the stop and go signs on Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood Boulevard in Disney's Hollywood Studios.
Yeah.
They are located on 5 different locations throughout the park, down Hollywood, down Sunset. So I think there's one on Hollywood and Prospect, Sunset and Highland, obviously Hollywood and Vine, Echo Park by Keystone, and then all the way down Sunset by Gowder, which goes down to Rock and Roller Coaster. And look, Disney's a storytelling company first, and Disney Imagineers are known for the meticulous attention to details. And these lights are no exception. These are I did my research. These are actual Acme Semaphone traffic lights that produce a very distinctive, clunk. And then you hear this whirring sounds as the signs switch between stop and go, which mimics, these are sort of the way traffic signals used to be, in the early 1900s. Again, we're talking about this I don't know why I'm sort of stuck in the sense of nostalgia. And when they work, and the last time I was there, I noticed like they would work, but they didn't always, they all have like this ding and they have this like bell sound. And if you look very closely at them, you'll see the bell in the back, which would allow pedestrians to sort of get these audio cues, if this was a real Hollywood and Sunset Boulevard, of when to stop and go. And I think I haven't been able to sort of tell, like, there's no sort of rhyme or reason when they go or every X amount of seconds, but I think that it adds a sense of sort of whimsy almost to the atmosphere, because it catches you by surprise and you will stop in your tracks and have to sort of look up and get this fun little attention to details that enhances the experience. Nobody, Tim, would know or care if it wasn't there, but the fact that it is there is the thing that helps to complete this painting of Hollywood during its golden age. So you feel like you're either walking through this historical scene in real Hollywood or on a real movie set where all of the details need to be there in order to complete the scene and the show.
Do you know how long I stood waiting at Hollywood and Sunset to go wait for that thing to turn? Are you telling me I didn't have to wait?
Do you know how many times I've stood there with my handy little recorder waiting for it to turn, and then eventually it does, and then sometimes the bell doesn't ring, and I'm like, come on, man. Like, it's one of the things that I hope, hopefully I caught it at a time, and details matter. Everything speaks, right? Michelangelo said everything speaks. When it doesn't work right, it speaks, right? So I'm hopefully they have been fixed. I literally today almost went to Hollywood Studios just to stand by these signs to see if they were working and to capture that sound.
I love that. And actually, that's I didn't have that on my list. That's one thing I never really paid attention to. I mean, I've seen them, but I didn't stop to watch them. But yeah, if they weren't there and they weren't working, I would notice probably.
Next time you go,
like something. Hopefully,
that's the goal, right? We want you. We will. I mean, I wanted listeners. Now I want you to actually go and stop and look and listen for these on. Okay. And again, they're only
but you're
on
telling me I can proceed. I don't have to wait for the green light. I mean, I would love it if you did, because it would be hysterical. Like, look at this guy who's not going because the sign says stop. But eventually, you come back 5 minutes later, he's still there because the light hasn't. That's funny. Oh, goodness me. All right, so I'm going to go. I actually, to your point, I did what you did. I started in the Magic Kingdom, but I thought, let me go around to all the other parks, and I did do that. And I actually ended up with a lot of Epcot on my list. But my next one, I'm going to go out of the parks entirely. And there's lots of bells and whistles on this list as we're doing this. I'm going to go to the boat whistles, and these are for all the boats, not just the ferry boats. And I even thought of, well, no, I won't go there in case this is on your list, but these are the launch boats I'm thinking of, and the whistles. And to me, that's another. I feel like I spend a lot of time standing reflecting of, I'm here in Walt Disney World instead of actually going in. But that's another case where we hear it. Probably one of the first things you hear, especially if you're at, one of the boat resorts like Wilderness Lodge or the Epcot resorts. But there's even nothing quite like being like out on the docks at the Wilderness Lodge, or where it's quiet and you can really hear that boat whistle. And again, it's just one thing that brings me back to Disney. This is a relaxing one because it usually reminds me of tranquil journeys across the waters of Bay Lake and Seven Seas Lagoon, or Crescent Lake, if you will, aboard these boats, which I think is one of my favorite attractions in all of Walt Disney World. It's not in the parks. But it's a combination of it's relaxing, it's tranquil, but it's also, I'm here in Walt Disney World. I don't hear these whistles anywhere else. I don't have ferry boats running around my house. And the fun part is, like I said, you can hear them in a lot of places because there are a lot of boats. And so that's one of my favorite sounds is those boat whistles, and especially when I've been waiting 15 minutes for my boat, and there it is.
So I had this, and I'm going to sort of piggyback with you because I had this on my list 2 times, but separately, right? So I had the sound of the the watercraft, right? The watercraft boats and the horns and the whistles, thinking specifically of the Seven Seas Lagoon, right? How they sort of connect us and how all of them have distinctive sounds, right? You know, you might not be able to hear it necessarily in your mind, but the horn of the ferry boats on Seven Seas Lagoon, right? That, again, there's that sense of anticipation as you go, is different than the sounds of the Friendship boats by Epcot and Hollywood Studios, or the Sassagoula River boats in some of the resorts and that go to Disney Springs. There's different sort of qualities of each of those, but the one that really I had as sort of a separate one, and if I'm jumping on one that you had separately, then I won't talk about it.
No.
But there was a specific other whistle that I had, and it was the Liberty Bell.
That's the one I didn't mention because I thought maybe you will. So I actually left that off my list thinking you would talk about it.
Yeah, this is the one, and please understand. So I live, I'm blessed. It is a gift to live as close to the parks as I do. And I've talked about this before, but sometimes, and I have friends who live even closer, and they hear it all the time. But when the wind is right and the sound is right, and I can hear the sound of the Liberty Bell riverboat whistle from my house. I have heard on occasion the howl of the dog. It's more rare. But there's something about that deep, resonant, melodic toot of the horn that literally echoes through Liberty Square and Frontierland and out, clearly out of the park, right? Again, when the wind and the weather is right, there's meaning behind the whistles, right? That multi-note toot is not just musical, but there's something commanding about her as well. It captures your attention. It represents certain things, departure and arrival, and now I'm thinking about it with sort of the narration behind it. Like there's almost a musical quality to this, and there's a dichotomy to the sound for me, because on one hand, it gives a sense of like adventure and excitement, and what are we going to see next as we go just around the river bend. But there's also something gentle and melodic that is very calming and relaxing and almost reassuring. And when you get on the riverboat and you're there and you hear it, and I think the riverboat is a vastly overlooked attraction. It provides this like serene contrast to the other bustling areas of the park. When you're on the riverboat and you're looking at Frontierland, which might just be packed with people, you almost don't hear it, right? Because you hear the sound of the water from the paddle wheel. And then when you hear that horn that's like so commanding just over your head, there's something wonderfully like comforting and authentic and historical and immersive about it, which is why it was on my list. And again, we talked about Walt with the trains. I think this sort of ties in with Walt's love of America and commitment that he and all those who have followed in his footsteps, commitment to creating and not just an immersive environment, but one that has to be historically rich and historically accurate.
Yeah, I love that. Like I said, I almost had it on my list, but figured you would take it. But the riverboat has this with the train. It's not just the whistle too. It's especially when you're riding. It's the sound, all the sounds, the paddle wheel and the water and all of that. It's yes, with you on that one. So actually, this one I'm going to hop in your trademark patented Wayback Machine for this one. And I'm going to Epcot because I did want to get around to the other parks and think about some of the sounds. And one of the sounds that we always loved in Epcot, and it's not something we can experience anymore, but this was and it took us a while to figure this one out, by the way. This was at the Electric Umbrella. And we remember sitting outside many, many times wondering, where are all these birds I'm hearing coming from? And then
nice.
taking us a while to realize, that sound's pumped in to, I presume, keep the real birds from eating my hot dog and my chicken sandwich and my french fries and all this other stuff. So it's kind of a 1-2. So it's not just sitting at the electric umbrella outside, enjoying a snack and relaxing, listening to the birds, but also with the fountain going in the background, and hearing just the sounds of the fountain, the water jets shooting up when there's a show going on, or even just the I don't know how you describe the gentle gurgling of water when the fountain's just doing its thing, but the whole sound of that Future World Plaza right there at the electric umbrella in particular is one we always loved, and now we're going to miss it because it's not there anymore. I do look forward to coming up with a whole new set of sounds in World Celebration and that whole area that we will take forward, but that's one sound I'll never forget, and I'll wish I could have one day, but it always that was always our we're in Epcot moment for us.
So this is great. I will tell you, I had a very tough time finding an iconic Epcot sound. I know that they're there.
Oh, I got a bunch of them on my list.
Right. And you know, like I think of it now and I'm like, oh, certain sounds, and I won't mention it because I don't want to take anything. But I think this is great. So you're talking about the natural sounds of the birds in Epcot, or are you talking about the artificially inserted sounds?
The second part.
So
if I'm even, that was my assumption, and maybe you'll correct me on this.
No, you are correct, but there's there's sort of a secondary or tertiary sound that when you said it, I forgot about. Do you also know that there's another sound of birds that is artificially inserted? And I think it's not just Epcot. I think it's a number of other places. And forgive me, I don't have it in front of me because I just remember this. But there's also the sounds of birds in distress that are pumped in. Don't get nervous. There are sounds of birds in distress that are meant to sort of, because look, Walt Disney World, the Disney parks around environmentality, conservation. If you notice, like birds are not a problem, right? Birds swooping down to steal your fries are not a problem. Bugs are not a problem. And the way that they handle a lot of these is not by using chemicals and pesticides and things like that, but by using sort of things in nature, whether they are ladybugs for bugs or sounds to keep birds away. So the sounds of birds in distress are played in the background to signal to other birds that there might be danger around and helps to keep them away. They are invisible to us, but they are often like species specific, using recordings of local bird species that will be present in the area that increases the effectiveness of deterring unwanted bird behavior.
Wow. See, I didn't know that. Now I learned something.
There you go.
It's entertaining and educating. That's cool.
Okay, I will, as tempted as I am to go back to Magic Kingdom, we will, as long as I'm outside the park, I am going to, if you don't mind, and if you do, that's fine. We'll just talk about it. I'm going to do a little bit of a twofer that exists in two different parks.
Okay.
And if this overlaps with you, then I apologize or whatever. Because I think, like the birds, there are so many sounds, Tim, that are invisible to us. These background environmental sounds that, again, help to sort of paint the auditory canvas that we consciously or subconsciously may or may not be paying attention to. And I think there are two places where this is done exceptionally well. And sometimes we're aware of it, especially as we walk into these lands, but then it sort of becomes invisible, but just helps to complete the detailed storytelling. And I'm talking about the background environmental sounds of Galaxy's Edge and Pandora.
I'll tell you why I'm laughing when you're done.
Tell me why you're laughing now, because I'll stop if it's really stupid.
No, I had this on my list kind of as a one catch-all, and the funny thing is I have question marks behind every one of these, and I'll tell you why after. But
and I would love to,
not because I'm doubting you, but
because this is something that, again, it's almost like a throwaway to the average guest. Like, you're not sitting there thinking about it, but sound designers literally spend years perfecting these sounds to create a believable environment. Not that we know what a believable environment in the Black Spire Outpost or an alien planet sounds like, but these sounds have to sort of feel authentic to the locations, enhance the thematic experience, and also maybe even give subtle or not so subtle nods to each of the respective IPs and franchises. So when you're in Black Spire Outpost, you have the sound of this bustling spaceport and ships and roar of spacecraft engines that are instantly familiar, right? As the kid in 1977, I've heard him said a million times, like watching Star Wars, we know what the sound of these engines sound like. Fans who are greater fans than I say they can hear the sound and know probably what or whose ship that might be, right? It helps to create this bustling atmosphere of a real working outpost, right? It creates immersion, it creates excitement. But there's also, and I'll tell you how I really came to be aware of this, there's also the sounds of alien wildlife and creatures and natural elements like the wind and rustling leaves. And I think that helps to create this sense of wonder and curiosity and realism and immersion and emotional impact and a little bit of mystery. And the reason why, and I really sort of became hyper aware of this. I had an amazing opportunity back in early 2021 to go to Galaxy's Edge before the park opened. I had an opportunity. I was invited to go and photograph the park before park opened. I shared it on Instagram. I'll try and find it and link to it in my show notes. And as much as I was there to capture the environment on quote unquote on film, in audio and I'm sorry, on photos and videos, I was hyper aware of the sounds. I was listening as almost more than I was what I was seeing, because I had the chance to listen to it without the cacophonous sound of the hum of guests going through. And you really sort of get a sense of just how detailed the audio picture is, right? We can look at a painting and see how detailed it is. Sometimes with audio, we don't realize it. And the same holds true with Pandora, the world of Alafatar. Again, the sounds of alien wildlife and the distant and sometimes close call of different creatures. Like you hear and I'm thinking as you sort of cross over the bridge from like by No Man Lounge and Tiffin's, where if you sit outside at No Man Lounge, you can hear a lot of these as they really sort of blend into the environment that you're in and the environment that is across the bridge. The bioluminescent plants and the flowing of water, it helps to paint the picture, the visual picture of this lush and vibrant and environment that is alive. So you've got this sense of like this tranquil space and place, but this sense of like curiosity and wonder. And there's almost a musical quality, which is different, I think, than Galaxy's Edge. There's a musical quality to the natural, quote unquote, natural, artificially made sounds of Pandora that I think adds to this sense of mystery. Look, the idea is that we cross this bridge, we're spanning, the 4 million light years, whatever it is, and going to some place that is literally off-world. So there's this sense of awe and mystery, but I think it's also meant to give you this feeling, which is the word I used earlier, this feeling of exploring a living, breathing world. And so when you have these soothing sounds of nature, I think the feeling that it's meant to, and it does evoke, is this very tranquil and peaceful atmosphere. It's not like this alien planet that, there's a lot of like stuff going on, very different, right? It's the opposite side of the coin of Black Spire Outpost, where there's some shady creatures going on. There's all kinds of like stuff happening there. This is much more about the flora and the fauna and the exotic wildlife that contributes to the believability of, the fact that you've been transported off planet to another world. And, they worked very closely, like with James Cameron and the team, to make sure it was a collaborative effort to make sure that the sounds in Pandora reflected and vice versa, the sounds that you would see, and not the sounds you would see, the sounds that you would hear while you're watching the Avatar films.
So the reason I had a question mark on mine, so I had, ambient noises in the lands as kind of a catch-all. And actually the first thing I thought of were the drums you hear in Adventureland, but I didn't know if you would disqualify that as part of the music of the area. But it did quickly. I went to Galaxy's Edge and Pandora. I wrote them both down. And then I put question marks behind them. Because this is a testament, I guess, to how well this is done. Because to me, I have not had the privilege of being there without 1,000 of my closest friends right beside me. So both of them came to mind. I'm like, yeah, 'cause I hear things. Wait, I've heard things, right? Isn't that right? I've heard things there. Well, I was sure there were, but then part of me was like, I don't know how much I'm hearing or how much my mind is filling in the blanks.
It's the heat.
Just because of how, or the heat, but it just goes to how incredibly detailed both of those lands are on every level, from the ground you're walking on to the cast members and the roles they're playing to the sounds, to the point where that's how well themed they are to me. Because I really find it hard to kind of tell difference between what's, I mean, I know what's real, not real, but it's so well done and so immersive that I start questioning. I don't know if I'm hearing all these sounds, or maybe some of them I'm kind of filling in my own head to complete the picture, but yes, but I think somewhere there, so I can take the question mark off.
I think what you just said would make the sound designers very happy, because specifically in places like Pandora, it's a combination, right? The wildlife sounds there were created using a blend of imaginative sound design on, digital instruments and real animal recordings to make sure that the sounds you hear are both believable and fantastical, right? So it sort of fits this alien environment. Plus, they change from day to night. So the sounds you hear in the daytime are different than the sounds you hear at night. And we'll have to go and do this together. Do you know that you can trigger, I guess can trigger certain sound effects? There's like hidden audio effects you can trigger by touching certain plants. So there's this responsiveness that they have that you obviously don't get on Earth, but you do get in Pandora. So especially like as you cross that bridge and there's a giant plant there. If you touch it,
touch everything now. So.
I mean,
well, not
within reach. Yeah. Sorry, So yeah, the background and environmental sounds, I felt bear mentioning.
I love that. Well, top 10, Lou. I mean, that's 10. What are we doing?
Is that 10?
All
right.
10.
If that's 10,
I know.
I mean, I'm not
like, I have like, I still have like 12 to go.
All right. So all right, give me one more, and then we'll do a relatively quickish honorable. Because I guarantee, like, if we were to be like, okay, we're done right here, screams, flames from the side of faces, because there's ones like people don't. How have you not mentioned this most obvious sound?
All right, I have a lot of obvious sounds. I'll save them. So I'm going to save my big, I think, to go with me here on my list. I just got to save it for a standalone here. One of my favorite sounds at Walt Disney World is no sound at all.
Timmy Foster.
You're very upset. I can see it.
No, I'm not.
Your camera's on. I can see it.
I'm not. It's the sound of I'm giving you, like, I'm hugging you because I'm like, look at you.
Well, now, whether I'm going the same place you're thinking of. So when I say that, I'm thinking in terms of when you're outside the parks at the resorts. There's one spot in particular I always think of, and this is over at the Wilderness Lodge. Two places, whether you're at the dock and it's in the morning, or it's late at night. The other place, when you used to be able to, and I used to do this walk all the time, take the trail between Wilderness Lodge and Fort Wilderness, that walking trail. Just being there, and there's a few other places on property that'll do this, and realizing you're not hearing the parks, you're not hearing the guests, you're not hearing the rides, you're not hearing the hustle and bustle. It is so peaceful, which is, on one hand, it's really cool knowing that just over there's thousands of people, but I can't hear them, but I'm still in this magical place. And I think especially on that dock, because you're just looking out the water, the sun's either coming up or going down. And it's just an odd thing to experience at Walt Disney World, being in a place where it is so peaceful and tranquil that you don't hear a thing. All you hear is the subtle sounds of nature going on when you can, that gentle wind going across the water, and that's it. But if the air is just right, that train whistle will make its way to you, remind you. But it's just having that, being able to take that break, and I don't even like to say it like that, just this nice peaceful oasis in the middle of everything. It's great.
So I love this, and I'm going to piggyback on this with something a little bit different, but I was trying, and I actually think I'm going to sort of combine multiple, I'm going to piggyback and combine all at the same time.
You do what you do.
Because I think because you talked about, I think you prefaced this one by talking about sort of the absence of sound, right? And I think it's interesting, and it made me think of something that was on my list because when it wasn't present, it was very noticeable. Let me explain. One of the things that was on my list is, and the only way I can sort of describe it is the hum of the crowds, right? The background murmur, this murmur of voices and laughter and movement and ambient noises that vary in intensity depending on the time of day and the location in the park. There's a vibrancy there. There's an excitement. There's an energy that comes with it. It's laughter. It's joy. It's cheers. It might be a scream from a coaster. Look at me squeezing that one in. And the reason why I mentioned it is because when it wasn't there, it was noticeable and almost bothersome. What I mean by that is when in the immediacy after the sort of the quote unquote post-COVID world and the parks were reopened again, there was this, it's funny. So friends of mine who are local, we sometimes joke about, the days right after COVID, because you could go to the parks and it was empty. And you felt like you had the park to yourself because you, for all intents and purposes, you did. Things were different. It wasn't the same. Understand, go with me here, as Tim Foster would say. Mm-hmm. The parks were empty and you could sort of move about freely. You could ride attractions. There were no waits or all these different things. And the thing that was missing was the murmur, was the hum of the crowds. So in one respect, it was almost like they turned the volume up to 11 for background music because you could hear it more distinctly. You could hear it clearly. You could hear it in different sections of the park that it would get drowned out by the hum. But that hum, for me personally, was missing. I missed the sound of the crowds. And I remember like being there a couple times and it made me sad because I was like, you don't know what you got till it's gone, right? So, crowds are sort of the double-edged sword. We don't want to be a lot of crowds because we want the ability to walk on. But I sort of missed that sound because the other thing that was on my list, and I'm like, do I even mention this? Or is Tim going to laugh at me that I'm like super sappy and emotional and going through menopause or something? But the sound of, and I'm going to get choked up on this because I have kids who aren't kids anymore, but the sound of laughter of children, like that innocent, beautiful, joyful laughter of kids. It's the heart of the Disney experience. It's the soul of going to Disney World, that warmth, that magic, that happiness, that, again, it's a family, it's a place for families to come together. And like, that's it. Like, that is the thing. So I missed the hum of the crowds. Yes, maybe the screaming on the coasters in the background, but it's like that laughter of kids that helps to punctuate that. And when I see that sometimes, and I watch, not in a weird, like I watch families and I see kids wide eyed and just that they have that like joyous belly laughter. I'm like, that's it, man. Like, that's why I moved here. That's why I do this. Like, that's the sound like that I love. And of all the sounds that we talked about, like, that's the one that matters most. I'm going to go hug my son. He's 18.
Okay.
I'm going to go hug. He's like,
I can use
what are
a
you
hug
doing?
here, buddy. But you're miles away. No, I love that answer. I feel like it's anticlimactic to follow it up with a bunch of dumb sounds.
I know. I didn't mean to sort of get, but
I mean, that's like a mic drop answer right there.
Well, it's true. And I think because you talked about the absence of sound, I felt like this was just the time, this was the time to mention it there. So yeah, so.
Well, show host, what do we do now? Where do we go?
All right, go with me. Let me go with you, Tim, and go through some or all of your honorable mentions, and we can.
Oh my God! I'll rattle them up. Okay. And then I left these. These are all pretty much, I think, very, very specific single sounds. So this wasn't a big moment, but randomly, the Space Rangers spin buzzer, attentional. That one, I'm there.
I had the cue. Don't go too fast because I had the cue. There's something. There's the sounds of the cue in Buzz without like the specific narrations.
Without the narration,
right.
Yeah.
But that there's this cool playfulness and sort of music and hearing Buzz in the background and the mechanical almost escalated sounds of like the movement of toys is prevalent because of being shrunk down. So I love the fact that you had that because I had it on my list as well.
I had in PhilharMagic, I think I've mentioned this a million times on your show, but the scene when you go into the Aladdin scene and you're lifting up of the clouds and there's just this almost imperceptible whoosh as you come up. And I even stopped to make sure. I don't know if I'm hearing it. I am hearing it, but for a while I wasn't sure if I was hearing it or making it up in my mind as part of the thing. But that one always sticks with me and takes me in PhilharMagic to the next level of this is the most magical movie I've ever seen. This was a big one, actually, this next one. Epcot sounds, specific Epcot sounds where you're in Epcot. The sound of the cars coming around on Test Track, which you can hear all throughout the park.
Oh, that's a nice one.
That's man, I know I'm hearing. That's such an Epcot sound.
That is an Epcot. That's a good one.
Let's see. This might be one. If people out there are screaming, why didn't you say this?
I'm staring at it. I'm staring at it on my list, and I'm like, is he really not going to mention? I'm assuming this is where you're going. So let's.
Well, I don't know. The one I'm thinking of is the opening and closing of the monorail door.
Yeah, man. Like people like, where's the ding ding in the monorail? Where's the doors in the monorail?
Yeah, that's a huge one. It was hard because I think about the monorail because we said no narration because that's usually the thing I go to audio wise in the monorail. But yeah, those doors.
But I think that there's multiple monorail sounds, right? There's the ding ding, chime, right? The ding ding.
Yep.
There's the sound of the door. I think, and when I was thought about this, you're too young to remember this. Do you remember the extinct sound of the manual doors being closed? In the early days, the cast members used to have to go and physically close each doors, and there was this mechanical like clunk sound from the door mechanism. You don't remember this?
No,
Tim. Like I can see it, I can hear it as the cast members would walk down and shut each individual door. Like I wish I could sort of describe the sound. Like it's like a taste. Like it's like a taste in my mind's like ears that I can hear so distinctly. Like you want to talk about a God, this is, it's a 40-year-old memory of a sound of the door closing. Quick aside, you, my friend who is listening, if you get this, please don't leave me hanging out here by myself, feeling like I'm the only one who remembers. Like, yes, there's the sound of the motors and there's the sound of the dings, but I remember not just the sounds of the current doors closing and that almost that pneumatic sound, but the physical sound of the cast members closing and locking each individual door.
I don't.
Email me Call the voicemail, post on social, just be like, Lou, I see you. 407-900-9391. I know I'm a crazy person, but please don't let me feel like I'm the only crazy person. That doesn't mean
you didn't hear it, though. So those two aren't mutually exclusive. So other things. Oh, this is a fair. In the queue, this is one I always forget about. In the queue of pirates, I guess when you're approaching the loading area, there's a part where you can listen and you can hear pirates digging. In a little alcove, if you listen.
On the right-hand side, if you're on the right-hand side of the queue, that's where you hear them digging.
Yeah, very, very cool. This is a favorite too.
Wait, stay with pirates. Let's hang at pirates.
That's the only pirates one I have. So if you,
I had a double whammy because I had the first thing I thought of was the cannon, the sound of the cannon of the battle, right? Yeah. Very sort of distinctive sound. But Tim, I don't know why I love this sound so much. I love the sounds of the seagulls. When you're going through the first area, right, sort of before you go back in time, and the pirates are on the beach, or the skeletons of the pirates are on the beach in the coastal and harbor areas. I don't know what it is, but it's something that's this childhood memory that brings up, and there's something wonderfully comfortable and comforting about the sound of the seagulls.
I like it. Well, here, I'll take you back again. Let's go to right up the road to Frontierland, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and the opening sequence where you're in the caverns and you're climbing up the hill, and the water is pouring down, and you hear the click click of as you're going up the hill, and how it echoes so much in that room is so.
There's a tension, right? There's a tension to it. Like,
that's the railroad.
There's a little bit of like fear, like, oh, what if like if it slips? But I had it. I had the railroad chains as you go up the lift hills as well.
I had going over to Epcot in the Japan Pavilion. I have one in the Japan Pavilion in the gardens. I don't know the technical name for this thing. The bamboo water hammer gizmo in the garden that I've seen. The
Japanese word is gizmo.
Okay, no, I've seen it called a deer hammer or something like that. But we know, if you don't know, it's the thing where it fills up with water and it slants down. When the water comes out, it comes back up with a clunk, a bamboo clunk. It's a small little tiny sound, but it's so just reminds me of the Japan Pavilion so much. I even want to get one of those and put it in my garden at home. But the other one I had, in Living with the Land, the environmental sounds in the early portion of the attraction, the rain and the barnyard sounds in the barn scene, the roosters clucking, the chickens.
Tim, when you go in that attraction,
listen to the land. Hey, that's what it was
Nature's
called.
plan will shine above. Let's listen to the land.
There you go.
Listen to the land.
Right next door, I'm guessing going around Epcot, a very specific sound, the crashing waves in front of the seas with Nemo and friends, and the seagulls going, mine, mine, mine. We have a joke where we think we should take a poll. It'd be like a game you can play with your family. Once you go through the attraction and you come out, especially if you get kids, what are they saying more? Are the kids going, mine, mine, mine? Or are they going, dude, righteous? Like, what are they doing more? I think it's a fun game we can all play, because I don't know who would win. This was a throwback. Remember that old party line phone in Le Chapeau stop on Main Street, USA?
Who are you? Quentin Spoon, City Postmaster, at your service.
Pick it up and actually hear a phone call conversation. And then I'll end on Main Street, USA, kind of where we started. This is always a favorite. I love pointing this out to people. And I guess there's music involved, but go with me here. It's the singing lessons window at the crossroads, where if you just sit there and you'll hear it, it's somebody giving very badly needed voice lessons to somebody singing. And you can hear it coming out the window, just like this was happening in Anytown, USA. And it's just, I love it because it's just one of those weird details. It seems like there's a lot of effort to make that happen, and there it is. And most people don't notice it. First of all, it's tucked out of the way on that side street, and if you're just walking down, you're not going to notice it. But it just reminds me, man, that attention to Disney detail that they have is incredible. So that was the last one I had on my list. So I thought we'd bring it back to Main Street, USA, from whence we started.
Nice. I will try and do the same. I had one that I put on, I took off my list. I ended up leaving it off, but I'll mention it anyway, because I think technically by the rules that I'm sort of making up as we go along, there's no other word. The Star Tours dings.
Star Tours.
Yeah.
I think it's melodic enough that it really almost counts as music.
Nah,
but
it counts.
But we know it, right? You know it, and it's one of those things that, even if you just sort of, it's on my list, but it's off my list. So, but I
think it counts. It sure counts.
Why not? We're making up the rules as we go.
Counts
along.
as much as the chimes on the TTA do. So that's why I'm going to let you have it. So.
I didn't feel that Disney's Animal Kingdom got enough love, and
no.
Listen, my man, I know you haven't been the same for a number of years, but the roar of the Yeti. Right, Tim. I know you've never actually been on Expedition Everest, but there's a huge Yeti inside.
I had my ears covered, so I didn't hear it.
It's that same, and you hear it. You don't sort of hear it outside, but you hear the screams. But as you go through, there's the sound of that Yeti that it evokes a sense of fear and excitement, and there's awe. Right, even though he's sort of in B mode when you see the Yeti. I also thought I'm going to go back to Magic Kingdom. And I thought of the Jungle Cruise, and yes, on one hand, it's sort of the background sounds of the jungle, but there's something wonderfully comfortable about the sounds of the engines of the Jungle Cruise. And I don't know sort of how to describe it, but when you get in and you feel like you're on this old working sort of steam engine boat, and the sound of those engines as they ply the waterways of Adventureland. I dig that too. And what I think is, I think this is the one that I'm going to end on, because I'm sure that at least one person is yelling, going, you two, you end this without mentioning this, and I'm never listening again. How did we not mention one of the most important sounds? I'm serious. It's one of the most important, because without this sound, you don't have the experience. Little Timmy Foster, the sound of the Magic Band chime at the entrance to each of the parks. How do we not do this? Right? It's
I don't
not
know.
just
What's wrong
happiness
with you, Lou?
and excitement and the sense of welcome, but it's very distinctive, right? This ding or chime that also is not singular, right? They have sort of special chimes for different bands, different times for different events and times of years. But this is it, man. This is the start of your day in the park. That is sort of the reward, right? So it's recognizable. It's nostalgic. It's associated with the anticipation of creating new adventures. It's such a positive tone. There's no, except if you get the womp womp womp. But when it goes green, you get that reassurance and that welcome and anticipation, and you're ready. You're ready to start your day. So I think it's important that you hear it. I think it signifies so much when you go. And I don't want to end on a downer, right? But there's one sound that I don't like in Walt Disney World.
Ooh.
There's one sound I don't like. It makes me sad. And the worst sound in Walt Disney World, and I'm going to explain what I mean by this, is crying kids. And before you're like, wait, he criticizes Becky for this. I don't mean screaming babies. When I hear and see kids that are sad, sad that they have to leave, or sad that they can't get the souvenir, or sad, it breaks my heart. Nobody should cry in Walt Disney World. There's times I've seen a kid might ask for something and their parents like, no, whatever. And some parents are a little bit more, abrupt than others, and that's fine. Right? Parents. And I would be like, no, honey, it's okay. Like, I'll buy it for you. Like, I feel so, like, I never want to see or hear the sound of somebody. You can cry for joy. You can cry of, of sentiment, but there's nothing, like, nobody should be sad crying in Walt Disney World ever.
Oh, see, that's nice. I thought you were going to say your most feared sound in Walt Disney World was little Timmy Foster behind you. Lou, wait for me! Not knowing on there. I thought that's what you were going to say.
Listen, the sounds I'm looking forward to most, Timmy Foster, is the next time you and I are in the parks together, and I want to hear the sound of the joy and the laughter in your voice, because that's what this is all about, right? It's why we love this place. It's the way it makes us feel, because these sounds are so important to us. Like, if you get it, you get it. Like, the things that we're talking about might make no sense to some people who don't understand this Disney thing that we love so much. But if you know, you know. And I hope that as we went through this list, you who's listening at home, in the car, on the treadmill, wherever you are, I hope that at least one of these put a smile on your face and, like, you found yourself nodding in agreement or yelling at your phone that we missed one. Either way, I would love, love, love to hear from you. Again, you can comment in the clubhouse at www.com/clubhouse. You can email me, but I would love to hear it, right? Because the reason why I love podcasting is because there's so much power in sound in the spoken word. Call the voicemail, 407-900-9391, 407-900-WDW1. Tell me what your favorite, most iconic sound is. Tell me one that we missed that should have been on the list. Tell me how these sounds make you feel. Share a memory, whatever it is, and I will play it on the air on an upcoming show. The other sound that I love so much, little Timmy Foster, is when the mailman comes and knocks on my door and says, Lou, the latest issue of Celebrations magazine, or more importantly, the latest special edition Celebrations book is here in your inbox or your mailbox. That is a sound that I can really get behind and truly love. It doesn't happen as often as I want, because you normally don't send me all the things, but it's fine. It's okay. I'm not hurt.
I try. I have a burning question, though. Does your mailman really come up to the door and knock on your door to give you the mail?
It's a metaphor. It's an analogy for, the story I was trying to tell.
Mails in. Like, now, here, perfect opportunity. I had one more entry on my list, and I disqualified it because it's music. But did you know, Lou, I know you know, but that in Journey into Imagination with Figment, when you go into the sound lab and you're having your hearing tested with a series of tones, did you know that those first few tones are actually the opening notes of One Little Spark by the Sherman Brothers?
Stop it.
Transposed down a few tones, but there you go.
See, this is the kind of stuff that you don't normally get from Tim. So this is actually pretty amazing.
You don't get this from Tim. That's just one of the little nuggets of wisdom we have. Now, we have a brand new book coming out soon. This is our first of many, we hope, in new series, definitive guides. This is Journey into Imagination. And we're excited about this one. This is a big coffee table book. This isn't a little tiny paperback. This is a big book, 150 something pages, and it goes into everything. It's not just a picture book. This is a story of the history of the attraction from concept through construction, walkthroughs of every version, all the image works in the Magic Eye Theater, the characters, Dreamfinder, Figment, the vehicles, the gardens, everything. It was so fun to put together. I learned so much by putting it together. But it's full with all kinds of photographs and illustrations that I did of all the floor plans and the turntable and the dream catcher ship that I call it. So comes with a free pen like all of our other books have in the past. But that's up for pre-sale now. That'll be shipping in a month or so, but it is up for sale at celebrationspress.com. So we're very excited about it. You can get a sneak peek at all the goodies that are inside on the website. Lou, I sent you a version of it, which you'll hopefully look at soon. But
listen,
we are very excited about this.
I'm very great. First of all, I'm very excited for this. Like, all kidding aside, like, I love this attraction. I am like a researcher, and I love the history, and I'm a completist when it comes to, like, I'm looking at my shelf, looking at the spot that I would love to
go right
put
there.
this book. I mean, I can't put the PDF there, so this is a not so subtle hint that I would really love. I'll order it. It's fine. I know you have to.
And to be straight, this isn't a digital book. This is a real book you can put on your coffee table with it.
And that's exactly where I would love to.
No, we're very excited about this.
Maybe I'll buy two. Maybe I'll buy two and give one away. Not so subtle hint.
Oh, you don't have to buy one. We'll give one away. You and me will do some shows. We'll give some away when they come in. That'll be fun.
I would love that. I would love that. I have seen the PDF. And look, like I've told the story 1,000 times. I don't care. I'm going to tell it 1,001. The very first time I saw you, little Timmy Foster, with that spiral-bound Guide to the Magic Book, there is no other book, period. No other book or books in that talk about Disney and talk about the parks that look and feel physically and in terms of the content inside, the way the Celebrations Press books do. They are not just magazines, they are collectible souvenir books, and the hardbound books that you do like this are absolutely spectacular. And I'm not saying that because I want you to send me two. I'm saying that because I love it, and I love you, and I love the stuff that you do.
All right, I'll send you two since you asked nicely.
Yay!
I mean, I still have that spiral bound. I still have that spiral bound Guide to the Magic book in my shelf.
I'm not kidding. They're sitting here on my shelves. I have all of them. I have
the one I brought in when my walking in the hall with the little mock up, that big thing. I still have that.
I'm going to do my Indiana Jones impression.
That belongs in a museum.
Well, there you go.
That hermetically seal that thing. I will just say you can do with this information what you like. My son is a huge fan. When he was a little baby, I literally had a DVD. Right, shows how old. I had a DVD with all three versions of Journey into Imagination because I raised him right. He only loved the first one, but he still has a Figment plush, like his original Figment plush in his room. So if I have to buy three, if you want to send me three, that's fine too. So Nicholas has one too. His birthday is next week, just so you know, also.
All right.
And people can find any and all of these and all the other good stuff that you do over at celebrationspress.com. I will, of course, link to it in the show notes. You can also find Celebrations Press on all of the socials. And if you, listening at home, have an idea for a top 10 that you'd love us to do together, maybe you want to join us in a top 10, email me, share it on social, post it in the clubhouse, and we will add it to the ever-growing list of top 10 ideas. Timmy Foster, the only other sound that I don't want to hear is the sound that I heard quite often growing up, is the sound of the phone being hung up on me. But metaphorically speaking, I hate the sound of the shows having to come to an end, but I appreciate you, brother. This, as always, was a ton of fun.
Yep, we'll do more. Listen up.
All-time favorite sound in Walt Disney World. Go right now. One sound.
What?
All-time favorite sound in Walt Disney World.
TTA.
Do you have any sounds?
I started with it. I'm going to end with it.
Do you have any sounds on your phone, like ringtones of?
No, although a friend of mine had that as their ringtone, and they tried to play. It didn't work.
Yeah, I have it as a text. Oh, I think it's from my mom.
Yeah, I was going to try and do that. I don't know how this phone thing works. You'll have to show me how to work. It's time once again for our Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I invite you to test your knowledge of Walt Disney World trivia or history, or see if you can identify where you may have heard a sound, song, or quote. If you think you know the answer, you can enter for a chance to win a Disney Prize package. And this week's trivia contest is once again brought to you by you. And what I mean by that is when you join and become a member of the WDW Nation, you not only become a very important part of every episode, show, and community, but for as little as $1 per month, you help support the show and unlock exclusive rewards like scavenger hunts, monthly group video calls, get access to our private Facebook group, plus there are surprise care packages from the parks, early access and discounts to special events, and much more. Plus, your contribution helps our Dream Team project, which sends children with life-threatening illnesses to Walt Disney World through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Plus, I just love being able to say thank you and give back to you and engage with you on an even more deeper level. I want to thank some new and longtime members of the Nation family, including Rick Bedoya, Michelle Hull, Giovanni Palladino, Sarah Spencer, and Grace Corba. And if you want to find out how you can join the Nation and get the rewards every month, you can visit www.radio.com/support. Now, before we get to this week's trivia question, let's go back, review last week's, and select our winner.
So we were talking all about food last week. Shocker, I hope you didn't listen hungry. And last week's question was actually about snacks, or specifically a snack location in Walt Disney World. I was talking about the Cheshire Cafe, once known as the Enchanted Grove. But this location, which is located sort of in between Tomorrowland and Fantasyland, was something else entirely. And your trivia question was to tell me, what was it? And for bonus points that don't really exist, what was its name? Thanks to you and everyone who entered, got this one correct, and knew that it was the Fantasyland Art Festival. Now, located right next to the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, just right across from the Mad Tea Party and Cosmic Rays Starlight Cafe, this was at once a character and portrait merchandise location. It was originally located in a temporary space near Peter Pan's Flight, but then moved here around 1973. It closed in 1981 and then reopened as a transition to a dining location as the Enchanted Grove with frozen drinks and fruit drinks and some different types of coffees. And then in 2011, it was renamed and rethemed to the Cheshire Cafe to align with the nearby Mad Tea Party. Anyway, I took all the correct entries, randomly selected one, and last week you were playing for a WDW 3D keychain, stickers, a WDW pin, and a mystery item or two. And last week's winner, randomly selected, is Anita Glennon. So Anita, congratulations. I'll send your prize package out to you right away. And if you played last week and didn't win, that's okay, because here's your next chance to enter in this week's Walt Disney World Trivia Challenge. So let's move from Magic Kingdom to Disney's Hollywood Studios, specifically the Disney MGM Studios, because what attraction did Toy Story Midway Mania replace in Disney's Hollywood Studios, where Toy Story Midway Mania currently sits? Another attraction once sat in and sort of around that same space. What was there before Toy Story Midway Mania? You have until Sunday, July 14th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern to go to WDWRadio.com. Use the form there. Once again, you're going to play for the keychain, the stickers, the pin, and a very cool, I already picked it out, mystery prize. So it's not really a mystery to me, it's a mystery to you. Very cool mystery item this week. So good luck and have fun. I want to quickly extend huge, sincere thanks to you once again for taking the time to tune in this and every week. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, please do so in your favorite podcast app. Come join the community and conversation over in the Clubhouse at www.radio.com/clubhouse. Let me know what your favorite iconic Walt Disney World sound is, or what you want to hear or learn about on the show, or just start or join in on one of the many fun, friendly, family-friendly conversations that goes on there. Don't forget to join me this and every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for WDW Radio Live, my live video broadcast and chat for and with you, where we talk about not just this week's show, but what's new and news in Walt Disney World. Sometimes, many times, I'm actually out in the parks. Can maybe take you with me to one of the parks or resorts. And you can watch on Facebook and or YouTube by going to WDWRadioLive.com. We're just watching in the Clubhouse on our Facebook page or YouTube channel. And of course, as much as I love connecting with you online, I still believe that nothing beats a handshake and a hug. So stay tuned. Coming very soon, I promise, information about our next meet of the month in Walt Disney World, as well as other events and cruises by going to WDWRadio.com/events. We still have some availability for our Halloween on the High Seas cruise on the Disney Magic to both Castaway and Lookout Key, as well as our cruise on the Disney Treasure in February, and our Adventures by Disney in 2025 to Japan, Disneyland in Southern California, and our Adventures by Disney River Cruise on the Seine. Again, to find out more and get a free no obligation quote for any or all of these, visit WDWRadio.com/events. And whether you are coming with us on one of our adventures or creating adventures on your own, no matter where you go, my trusted partner and yours is Mouse Fan Travel, where they can handle all of the planning so you can focus on making magic and memories. They offer free, I mean it, free vacation planning services with more than 20 years of experience creating memorable vacations, not just to Disney, but to destinations around the planet. You can visit mousefantravel.com for a free, no obligation quote. Remember, it's who I recommend because it's who I have used, and more importantly, who I trust for you. And finally, my friend, and you are my friend, whether we have met yet or not, all I ask is that if you like the show, please help spread the word. Share a link to this or your favorite episode on social. Tag me at Lou Mongello. I promise to reshare and follow you back. And I hope that you have a great day and even better tomorrow. And always remember that every day you have an opportunity to create your own happily ever after. So choose the good. Be the good. I love and appreciate you. So until next time, see ya.
Hey, Lou, it's Jean from Southern California calling. I just got back from Paris, and your podcast on Disneyland Paris was just perfect timing because it was my first time there. And I spent 3 nights, 2 full days, and stayed at the Art of Marvel Hotel, which I thought was amazing. And the first thing I would want to see, do, or eat in Disneyland Paris, kind of cheating because now that I've done it, but if I do go back, I really liked the Bistro Chez Remy restaurant. It was very fun to eat lunch there after enjoying the Ratatouille ride, and everything from the perspective of the rats was really clever. I really enjoyed that. Also, thanks for the heads up on the dragon at the castle. I may not have clued into that if it wasn't for your podcast. And it was very impressive and a nice change from what's been available to me at Disneyland and Disney World. Anyway, thanks for the podcast on Paris. I don't recall the name of the folks you talked to, but their inputs were very helpful as well, especially the Brasserie Rosalie, which happily was just steps away from the Art of Marvel Hotel. Take care. Hope you had a good 4th, Lou. Bye-bye.